Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine standing on a windswept shore, the salty spray of the ocean misting your face. The cries of gulls circle overhead, mingling with the rhythmic crash of waves against the sand. Now, picture this. Before you stretches the vast unknowable expanse of the ocean, a liquid horizon that blurs the line between the world you know and the mysteries that lie beyond. But you are not alone, for in this scenario, you're surrounded by the bravest. Their destiny beckons them to go beyond the boundaries of the known world and explore its depths. That's the dilemma the sailors of old have experienced for many years. The waves are constantly changing. The weather is unpredictable. This is why navigation is important to sailing. So, how did they succeed? And what made their achievements so great? To tackle this, we need to delve into the importance of their work. As you sail forth, remember that you have no GPS, no radar, no satellite communication. Your only instruments are a deep-seated knowledge of the stars, a keen understanding of the currents, and an unwavering trust in your own instincts. It might sound like something out of a fantastical novel, but for millennia, this was the reality for countless seafarers across the globe. Intrepid explorers who dared to venture into the unknown, guided only by the whispers of the wind and the silent promise of the stars. It seems impossible, right? To set sail across thousands of miles of open water relying solely on your wits and the wisdom passed down through generations. But that's precisely what ancient navigators did, and the magnitude of their accomplishments is nothing short of breathtaking. They traversed oceans, discovered new lands, established trade routes, and connected disparate cultures, all without the aid of modern technology. Their stories are a testament to human ingenuity, resilience, and our enduring desire to explore the world around us. So how did they do it? How did these ancient mariners, armed with seemingly limited tools, manage to navigate the treacherous seas with such remarkable accuracy and success? That's the central question we'll be unraveling today. We're embarking on a journey through time, exploring the intricate and often ingenious techniques that allowed ancient civilizations to conquer the oceans and forge connections across vast distances. We're going to dive into the secrets of ancient navigation, not just the what, but the how and the why behind these incredible feats of maritime exploration. We must honor the years of devotion that these civilizations put into understanding and mastering the oceans around them. They weren't simply lucky or blessed by fate. It was through hardship that they had a good fortune. Personally, I've always been drawn to stories of exploration and adventure. The idea of pushing the boundaries of the known, of venturing into uncharted territory, has always resonated deeply with me. And when you consider the challenges faced by ancient navigators, the sheer audacity of their endeavors, it's difficult not to feel a sense of awe and admiration. Imagine the courage it took to set sail into the unknown, with no guarantee of return, no clear understanding of what lay ahead. The sailors of old were brave to face any challenge. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What were they thinking as they looked out, and what can we learn from their experiences, their triumphs, and their failures? So fasten your metaphorical seatbelts, or perhaps more appropriately, tighten your metaphorical life vests, because we're about to embark on a fascinating voyage through the history of ancient navigation. Over the next several minutes, we'll be exploring a range of topics from the fundamental principles of celestial navigation to the more subtle and intuitive methods used by experienced seafarers. We'll be examining how ancient navigators utilized the stars as a map, deciphered the secrets of ocean currents and wind patterns, and learned to interpret the subtle clues provided by wildlife and the natural environment. We'll also be taking a closer look at the specific techniques employed by different cultures, from the Polynesians who colonized the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean to the Vikings who navigated the icy waters of the North Atlantic. And we will also be delving into civilizations in Asia and the Mediterranean. In the modern world, we think our knowledge is superior, but that's simply not the case. The sailors of old learned to read the seas and became one with their ship, so it is important for us to acknowledge and to admire. But this journey isn't just about the how of ancient navigation, it's also about the why. We need to understand the cultural, societal, and economic forces that drove ancient civilizations to explore the oceans. What were they searching for? What motivated them to take such risks? How did their navigational skills shape their societies and their interactions with other cultures? Moreover, we should remember that each culture, whether it's Asian, African, or European, had different and unique methods to sail, and each has their own way of reading the sea. To do that, we also need to acknowledge the fact that the navigators had to remember star charts and use what they already knew to survive in the oceans. The sea has no pity for those who are unlucky, and for those who do not respect the power of nature. So are you ready to set sail? Are you ready to immerse yourselves in the world of ancient navigation and uncover the secrets of those who dared to venture into the unknown? Then join me as we embark on this incredible journey through time and across the oceans. Together, we'll discover the ingenuity, resilience, and enduring spirit of adventure that defined the ancient navigators and shaped the course of human history. Prepare to be amazed, to be challenged, and to gain a new appreciation for the remarkable achievements of our ancestors. So we will explore the history of sailing, what made it so important to civilizations, and who were the most notable of the navigators. Prepare yourself, because we are setting sail into the depths of the deep blue. Before we delve into the specific techniques used by ancient navigators, it's essential to understand the fundamental importance of navigation to the development of human civilization. In a world where land travel was often slow, difficult, and dangerous, the oceans provided a vital means of transportation and communication. Waterways connected communities, facilitated trade, and enabled the exchange of ideas and cultures across vast distances. Navigation, therefore, was not just a skill, it was a lifeline, a key to prosperity, power, and survival. If we look at modern society, the oceans continue to be important to us. It is through shipping that we receive the majority of our goods, and even our internet and telecommunication cables cross under the water. The oceans are always important to our civilization, one of the primary drivers of maritime exploration, and the development of navigational skills was trade. Ancient civilizations were often reliant on resources and goods that were not available within their immediate territories. Maritime trade routes allowed them to access these essential commodities, fostering economic growth, cultural exchange, and the development of complex social structures. The demand for raw materials and luxurious goods fueled an ever-increasing desire to explore and control the seas. Think of the ancient Egyptians, who relied on maritime trade to acquire timber from Lebanon, spices from the Horn of Africa, and precious metals from the Aegean Sea. Or consider the Phoenicians, renowned seafarers and traders who established a vast network of trading posts throughout the Mediterranean, connecting distant civilizations and facilitating the flow of goods, ideas, and technologies. Beyond trade, navigation also played a crucial role in resource acquisition. Many coastal communities relied on the sea for their sustenance, harvesting fish, shellfish, and other marine resources. Maritime exploration also enabled civilizations to discover and exploit new sources of raw materials, such as timber, minerals, and precious metals. The ability to control access to these resources was often a key factor in the rise and fall of empires. For example, the ancient Greeks relied on maritime trade to import grain from the Black Sea region, ensuring a stable food supply for their growing population. The Vikings, skilled seafarers and raiders, used their maritime prowess to plunder coastal settlements and acquire valuable resources throughout Europe. Control of the seas was also a critical factor in ancient warfare. Naval power allowed civilizations to project their influence across vast distances, defend their territories from attack, and conquer new lands. Maritime skills were essential for military success, enabling civilizations to control trade routes, blockade enemy ports, and transport troops and supplies. Think of the Athenian navy, which played a decisive role in the Peloponnesian War, or the Roman navy, which dominated the Mediterranean Sea for centuries. The ability to control the seas was often a key determinant in the outcome of conflicts and the balance of power between civilizations. Civilizations could also use ships to help support and supply armies. Without ships, many battles would have been for naught. Perhaps the most compelling motivation for maritime exploration was the desire for expansion. Ancient civilizations were often driven by a need to find new lands, establish colonies, and extend their influence across the globe. Maritime exploration enabled them to reach previously inaccessible regions, opening up new opportunities for trade, resource acquisition, and cultural exchange. The voyages of Christopher Columbus, though controversial in their consequences, exemplify this drive for expansion. His quest for a new sea route to the East Indies led to the European discovery of the Americas, transforming the course of world history. Navigation also played a crucial role in cultural exchange, facilitating the interaction and exchange of ideas, technologies, and artistic traditions between different societies. Maritime trade routes served as conduits for the transmission of knowledge, enabling civilizations to learn from each other and adapt to new challenges. This exchange of ideas often led to innovation and progress, fostering the development of new technologies, artistic styles, and philosophical concepts. The Silk Road, though primarily a land route, also had a significant maritime component, connecting East Asia with the Mediterranean world and facilitating the exchange of goods, ideas, and religious beliefs. The voyages of the Polynesian seafarers led to the spread of their language, culture, and agricultural practices throughout the Pacific Ocean. Cultures could also use sailing to establish colonies or trade hubs. In the modern world, this is a way for cultures to spread and have more power. But perhaps the most fundamental driver of maritime exploration was simply the human spirit. That innate curiosity, that relentless thirst for the unknown that has propelled humanity forward throughout history. Ancient navigators were not just motivated by economic or political gain. They were also driven by a deep-seated desire to explore the world around them, to discover new lands, and to push the boundaries of human knowledge. This spirit of adventure is what ultimately fueled their remarkable achievements. As we explore the techniques of these ancient sailors, we must always keep in mind this innate human spirit. They went forth into the world to find fortune and glory, or simply to survive in the world. So as we can see, navigation was not just a technical skill. It was a fundamental pillar of ancient civilization. It enabled trade, resource acquisition, warfare, expansion, cultural exchange, and the fulfillment of humanity's deepest desires. It was a driving force behind the development of societies, economies, and cultures across the globe. Now we will start to explore the knowledge that they had to master in order to survive and to make their name. Let's now turn our attention to the heart of ancient navigation, the techniques that allowed these intrepid seafarers to chart their course across the open ocean. And among these techniques, none was more fundamental or more universally employed than celestial navigation. In a world without GPS, radar, or electronic charts, the stars provided a reliable and constant guide, a celestial map etched across the night sky. The importance of knowing the sky cannot be understated, as this was the way that navigators were able to know where they were headed at night, what direction they needed to travel, and when they would get there. At the heart of celestial navigation lay a deep understanding of astronomy, a knowledge of the stars, constellations, and their movements across the night sky. Ancient navigators spent years, often starting from a young age, learning to identify key stars and constellations and tracking their positions throughout the year. They memorized star charts, observed the changing patterns of the sky, and developed a keen sense of the celestial sphere. The ability to recognize constellations was like learning a new language, a language that spoke of direction, distance, and time. Each constellation served as a landmark, a celestial beacon that could guide sailors across vast distances. Ancient navigators learned to read the sky as if it were a map, deciphering its secrets and using its guidance to reach their destinations. Learning about the constellations was not just about getting from point A to point B. Each constellation had deep meaning to all the cultures that used it. Learning them meant more than just getting home. One star in particular held special significance for navigators in the Northern Hemisphere. Polaris, also known as the North Star. Polaris is located almost directly above the Earth's North Pole, making it appear stationary in the night sky. This unique property made Polaris an invaluable guide for determining direction, as it always points true north. By observing the position of Polaris, navigators could easily determine their latitude, their position north or south of the equator. The angle between Polaris and the horizon is equal to the observer's latitude. For example, if Polaris appears 40 degrees above the horizon, The observer is located at 40 degrees north latitude. The position of Polaris was also useful because many other constellations could be found relative to it. For sailors who sailed in the north, this star was an unwavering beacon in the night sky. To measure the angle between a star and the horizon, ancient navigators developed a range of instruments, the most common of which were the astrolabe and the quadrant. These instruments allowed them to make precise measurements of celestial altitudes, providing them with the data they needed to calculate their latitude. The astrolabe, a complex and versatile instrument, was used for a variety of astronomical calculations, including determining the time of day, locating the positions of stars and planets, and measuring angles. The quadrant, a simpler instrument consisting of a quarter circle marked with degrees, was primarily used for measuring the altitude of celestial objects. However, the quality of these instruments was not always that good, so it was also essential to have a sense of the waters. While the astrolabe and quadrant were primarily used in the northern hemisphere, the Polynesian navigators of the Pacific developed their own unique system of celestial navigation, known as the star compass. This system, based on centuries of observation and memorization, divided the horizon into segments based on the rising and setting points of different stars. Each segment was associated with a particular direction, allowing navigators to maintain their course even when sailing far from land. The Polynesian star compass was not a physical object. It was a mental construct, a map etched in the minds of skilled navigators. They memorized the rising and setting points of hundreds of different stars, as well as the relationships between these stars and the islands they were trying to reach. This knowledge was passed down through generations, ensuring the continuity of their navigational traditions. It's difficult for us to imagine the level of memory and dedication required to master ancient navigation techniques. In a world without writing, all navigational knowledge had to be memorized and transmitted orally. Navigators were, in essence, living computers, storing vast amounts of information in their brains and accessing it as needed. This required rigorous training, constant practice, and a deep commitment to preserving their cultural heritage. However, some civilizations did have written materials for sailors, whether it was a list of stars or simply a map. What is more interesting, however, is what many of these cultures had a sailing stone, which was a stone carved by an explorer to mark their journey. Navigation was always about more than directions. Every step and turn was dedicated to what the sailors wanted. It could be a good harvest, a new settlement, or even going to war with another culture. Navigators had to know the land and sea to know what to do, so they revered those who had mastered the trade. It is also important that they knew when certain events would happen. They needed to be ready for any kind of events in the sky and sea, for if they were not, the results would be devastating. While celestial navigation was a powerful tool, it was not without its challenges and limitations. The accuracy of celestial measurements depended on clear skies, which could be difficult to achieve during storms or periods of heavy cloud cover. The movement of the ship itself could also affect the accuracy of measurements, requiring navigators to make adjustments for pitch, roll, and yaw. Furthermore, celestial navigation primarily provided information about latitude, the position north or south of the equator. Determining longitude, the position east or west, was a much more complex problem that was not solved until the development of accurate clocks in the 18th century. Prior to this, navigators had to rely on dead reckoning, estimating their position based on their speed, direction, and the amount of time they had been traveling. Because of these limitations, ancient navigators rarely relied solely on celestial navigation. They combined their knowledge of the stars with other techniques, such as observing ocean currents, wind patterns, and the behavior of wildlife. They developed a holistic approach to navigation, integrating a wide range of information to create a complete picture of their surroundings. The modern world tends to simplify, but the best way to approach sailing is with all information available. In Polynesian culture, the best and simplest way to remember stories and directions was to pass the information through song. Songs can live on in time, and that is how it has continued. Stories are also extremely crucial to remember a place and the people of that place. The power of a good story cannot be understated, And that is why it has been so easy for culture to be passed down and be used in other ways. This meant for many cultures that the stars were in a sense a gift of the gods, and that humans simply needed to figure out the pattern to find their way home. The stars are not the only way that people can be guided. It is also essential to remember that the sea and sky are intertwined, so it can be easier to travel that way. We've explored the celestial map, but the ocean itself wasn't a blank slate to ancient navigators. It was a dynamic, living entity filled with subtle clues that, when properly interpreted, could reveal a wealth of information about their location and direction. Understanding ocean currents and wind patterns was absolutely critical for safe and efficient navigation, and ancient mariners developed an incredibly nuanced understanding of these forces. The ocean is anything but a flat blue surface. It's a swirling, churning mass of water with complex currents, varying temperatures, and constantly shifting wind patterns. Learning to read these subtle cues was essential for ancient navigators, and it required a deep understanding of oceanography and meteorology. Ocean currents are like invisible rivers flowing through the sea, transporting vast amounts of water across long distances. These currents are driven by a combination of factors, including wind patterns, temperature differences, salinity variations, and the Earth's rotation. Ancient navigators learned to identify and utilize these currents to their advantage, either speeding up their voyages or avoiding areas where currents might push them off course. Ocean currents can have a significant impact on a ship's speed and direction. A strong current flowing in the same direction as the ship can significantly reduce travel time, while a current flowing against the ship can slow it down or even push it backwards. Navigators needed to be aware of the direction and strength of currents in order to accurately plan their voyages. How did ancient navigators identify ocean currents? They relied on a combination of observation, experience, and knowledge passed down through generations. They looked for subtle clues, such as changes in the water's color, temperature, salinity, and the presence of certain types of seaweed or marine life. Water color can be an indicator of current strength and direction. Clear, deep blue water often indicates a strong current, while murky or greenish water may indicate a weaker current or the presence of sediment. Water temperature can also be a clue, as warmer water is often associated with currents flowing from the equator, while colder water is associated with currents flowing from the poles. Even certain smells could indicate a presence of a current. Stronger smells meant that it was close. Salinity, the amount of salt dissolved in the water, can also be an indicator of ocean currents. Salty water can indicate that there is a current present and that the surrounding weather might also change in a similar aspect. Marine life also provided valuable clues. Certain types of fish, seaweed, or plankton are associated with specific currents, and their presence can indicate the direction and strength of the current. For example, the presence of certain types of seaweed might indicate a current flowing from a specific region, while the presence of certain types of fish might indicate a current with a particular temperature or salinity. Wind was another critical factor in ancient navigation. Ancient sailing vessels relied entirely on wind power, so navigators needed to understand wind patterns and how to use them to their advantage. They learned to recognize prevailing winds, which blow consistently in a particular direction, and seasonal winds, which change with the seasons. Understanding wind patterns allowed navigators to plan their voyages and choose the most efficient routes. They could use prevailing winds to speed them along their desired course, and then adjust their sails to compensate for changes in wind direction. Wind patterns were just as crucial as stars. The trade winds, which are reliable wind belts near the equator, were particularly important for ancient navigators. These winds blow consistently from east to west, making them ideal for sailing across the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. However, the area near the equator is also characterized by a region of calm winds known as the doldrums. Navigators needed to avoid the doldrums, as ships could become becalmed for days or even weeks, running the risk of running out of supplies. The direction of the wind was not the only thing that navigators needed to know. Navigators also had to understand the strength of the wind, or else they would know what sails to use. The truly skilled navigators understood how to combine their knowledge of currents and winds to optimize their journeys. They could use currents to speed them along their desired course, and then adjust their sails to harness the power of the wind. It was an intricate dance with the elements, requiring a deep understanding of both oceanography and meteorology. Sailors needed to become one with the environment around them in order to know where to go. Imagine sailing into the trade winds in a certain way in order to head east or west, while navigating the currents that help push you along your journey. The best and most skilled of sailors could do this easily. Ancient navigators weren't limited to reading the water and the sky. They also relied on the subtle clues provided by wildlife and other environmental factors to determine their proximity to land. These clues, often subtle and easily overlooked, could provide a valuable warning of approaching coastlines or islands. While oceans stretch on for many miles, they are rarely empty or without life. Life almost always signals a possibility of some land or rock close by. One of the most reliable indicators of land was the presence of birds. Many seabirds return to land each night to roost, so observing their flight paths could indicate the direction and distance of nearby islands or coastlines. The higher flying birds often have nests further away, so those birds could give a clue as to what land might be. Experienced navigators learned to distinguish between different species of seabirds, each with its own unique flight patterns and habits. Some birds only venture a certain distance from land, so their presence indicated that land was relatively close, while others could fly for hundreds of miles, providing a less precise indication of proximity. Birds that were hunted also would flock to land for safety, but they were useful to have to see when land was on the horizon. The presence of driftwood or floating vegetation could also indicate proximity to land. Rivers carry debris out to sea, and this debris often accumulates near coastlines or islands. The presence of this debris could provide a valuable clue, especially in areas where land was difficult to see due to fog or haze. Odors were also used to navigate. Navigators were often able to smell the land before they could see it. The scent of vegetation, soil, or even smoke from fires could be carried by the wind, providing a valuable warning of approaching land. Skilled navigators could distinguish between different types of odors, allowing them to identify specific islands or coastlines. Land absorbs and holds more heat than the ocean does. Clouds can then form because of the temperature difference. This then meant that if navigators learned cloud patterns, then they could find the position of land or mountains. Marine life also provided valuable information about proximity to land. The presence of certain types of fish, whales, or dolphins could indicate specific water conditions or proximity to land. Some species of fish are known to migrate along coastlines, while others prefer shallow waters near islands. The presence of these species could provide a valuable clue about the location of land. Also, the water depth that the whales dive to is the same type of water depth that surrounds islands and land masses. The water color can also tell sailors if a whale or certain fish are in the area, because many whales and types of fish have a glow to them in the water. The point of the matter is that any small element could be helpful to finding land, and even a small thing can make a major difference. Ancient navigation wasn't just about using instruments and observing environmental cues. It was also about developing a keen sense of intuition and sensory awareness. The best navigators possessed a deep understanding of their own bodies and senses, and they used this knowledge to enhance their navigational abilities. They were able to feel the ocean, smell the land, and sense the direction of the wind, even in the dark. While modern navigation relies heavily on technology, ancient navigators relied on their own senses to guide them across the seas. They developed an intuitive understanding of the ocean environment that allowed them to navigate with remarkable accuracy. One of the most remarkable feats of sensory navigation was the ability to feel the direction of the waves and swells, even in the dark. Waves are influenced by land masses, so their patterns can provide clues about nearby islands or coastlines. Experienced navigators could distinguish between different types of waves, each with its own unique characteristics. Some waves are generated by local winds, while others travel long distances from distant storms. By analyzing the direction, height, and frequency of waves, navigators could gain a sense of their position relative to land. Swells or waves can also change depending on the seafloor, which means that different seafloor materials could also give clues to the sailors. We've already touched on the importance of smell as a land indicator, But it's worth emphasizing the remarkable sensitivity of ancient navigators to subtle changes in the air. They could smell the land long before they could see it, detecting the scent of vegetation, soil, or even smoke from fires carried by the wind. The human nose is capable of detecting a wide range of odors, and experienced navigators learned to associate specific smells with particular islands or coastlines. They could distinguish between the scent of pine forests, tropical vegetation, or volcanic activity, allowing them to identify even subtle changes in the color of the sky and water could provide clues about the proximity of land. Shallow water reflects more light, making the water appear brighter, while coastal areas often have distinctive atmospheric conditions that affect the color of the sky. Experienced navigators learn to recognize these subtle visual cues and to use them to enhance their overall understanding of their surroundings. They could distinguish between the deep blue of the open ocean, the turquoise of shallow reefs, and the greenish tinge of coastal waters. If you combine the senses all the way, it could almost be like the sailors were gifted with magic. Ultimately, the best ancient navigators possessed something akin to a sixth sense, an intuitive understanding of the ocean environment that went beyond instruments and observations. This intuition was born from years of experience, a deep connection to the sea, and a willingness to trust their own instincts. It was a holistic approach to navigation, combining intellect, intuition, and physical awareness. These navigators were not just technicians, they were artists, poets, and philosophers of the sea. Many cultures would call the greatest of sailors chosen because they had luck on their side, and many would attribute their success to something other than themselves. However, their ability to navigate was because of skill and knowledge, nothing more. Let's turn our attention to two specific cultures that exemplify the remarkable achievements of ancient navigation: the Polynesians and the Vikings. The Polynesians, who colonized vast stretches of the Pacific Ocean, represent perhaps the most impressive feat of maritime exploration in human history. The Pacific Ocean is the largest and deepest ocean on Earth, spanning over 64 million square miles. The Polynesians, who originated from Southeast Asia, began exploring and colonizing the Pacific around 1500 BC, eventually settling islands as far apart as Hawaii, Easter Island, and New Zealand. This required not just skill, but extreme knowledge about weather systems that still continue to change. The Polynesians used large, double-hulled canoes that were incredibly stable and seaworthy, capable of carrying large crews, supplies, and even livestock. These canoes were constructed from carefully selected timbers, lashed together with ropes and sealed with caulking. The double-hull design provided stability and buoyancy, allowing the canoes to navigate rough seas and carry heavy loads. The double-hulled canoes were also equipped with sails, allowing them to harness the power of the wind. The sails were typically made from woven leaves or bark cloth, and they could be adjusted to capture the wind from different directions. Also, the way that they were made could lead to them becoming homes for some families. The important thing was not just the size of the vessels, but what they meant to these civilizations. The Polynesian navigation system, known as wayfinding, was a holistic approach that combined celestial navigation, wave patterns, bird flight paths, and a vast knowledge of the ocean environment. Wayfinders memorized star compasses, wave patterns, and the characteristics of hundreds of different islands. They could sense the direction of the swells, smell the land from miles away, and observe the flight paths of seabirds to determine their proximity to land. Wayfinding was a complex and sophisticated system that required years of training and experience. Navigators learned to integrate all of their senses and observations to create a complete picture of their surroundings. They were not just technicians, they were artists, poets, and philosophers of the sea. There was a crucial element in this wayfaring, and that was information. The best way to transfer information from one generation to another was the use of songs. If you can sing something, or tell a story about something, you can remember what is going on, and then you can pass it to the next generation. The Viking case: raiders, traders, and explorers of the North Atlantic. Now let's turn our attention to the Vikings, who were also master seafarers. The Vikings, who originated from Scandinavia, dominated the North Atlantic from the 8th to the 11th centuries. They used their maritime skills to raid coastal settlements, explore new lands, and establish trade routes across vast distances. The Vikings were skilled shipbuilders, and their longboats were ideally suited for navigating both open ocean and shallow rivers. The longboats were slender, lightweight vessels with a shallow draft, allowing them to sail up rivers and land on beaches. They were also equipped with oars, allowing them to navigate in calm waters or against the wind. The Vikings used a combination of celestial navigation, coastal piloting, and dead reckoning to navigate the seas. Coastal piloting involved using landmarks to guide their way along coastlines, while dead reckoning involved estimating their position based on their speed, direction, and the amount of time they had been traveling. Also, the idea of making sure their way to travel was well planned, and the way back was well thought. Vikings needed to know what they were up against and how to manage that. Vikings are also the only culture that has left a record of exploration in the form of Viking sagas and stories. These sagas continue to give us a glimpse into how to understand the world and how the Vikings had to survive in their world. With the advent of modern technology, the traditional navigation skills of ancient civilizations began to decline. GPS, radar, and electronic charts made it easier and faster to navigate, but also led to a loss of invaluable knowledge. As technology advanced, many people turned to it in an attempt to distance themselves from the oceans. This then was a huge detriment to what skills humans needed. As technological tools became widespread, the need for skilled navigators diminished. The knowledge that had been passed down through generations was gradually forgotten, and the connection between humans and the sea was weakened. Today, there's a growing effort to preserve and revive these ancient navigation techniques. Some Polynesian navigators are teaching wayfinding to younger generations, and researchers are studying Viking navigation methods to learn more about their seafaring abilities. It is important to remember the skills that have helped us survive. Organizations dedicated to preserving maritime heritage are working to document and share the knowledge of ancient navigators. They are teaching traditional navigation techniques to modern sailors and promoting the importance of understanding the ocean environment. As we move forward, it is also extremely important that we learn from the past and move towards preserving our memories and our ancient skills. These are what got us to the modern era, and why we should be grateful to our forebears. There's a growing appreciation for the ingenuity and skill of ancient navigators. We're beginning to realize that they possessed a deep understanding of the natural world that we've largely lost in the modern era. The best way to pay our respect to them is to keep their knowledge alive, and to continue to explore and learn. By preserving and reviving ancient navigation techniques, we can reconnect with our past and learn valuable lessons about sustainability, resource management, and the importance of human connection. This understanding is also important as we seek to explore new seas and planets. Ultimately, choosing the perfect journal is a deeply personal experience. Consider your individual needs, your writing style, and the aesthetic that inspires you most. Whether you're drawn to the practicality of bullet journaling, the creative freedom of a blank canvas, or the guided reflection of a prompted journal, the most important thing is to find a tool that empowers you to connect with yourself, explore your thoughts, and document your journey. So, take your time, explore the options, and embark on the rewarding path of journaling. If you are curious about the types of journals I use and love for journaling, you can check out my collection. I have mentioned the links in the description. Looking for inspiration? Don't forget to peek at the description for a few of our favorite journal designs. And thanks so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. See you in the next video.